Hello everyone, this video is on constant rate, and basically it is a continuation of what we did the previous section. This has two exercises to it, so let's jump in and see what we can do with those. The first one says Michelangelo mows his lawn at a constant rate. Now that is important that it's a constant rate, because that's going to allow us to do certain things that we need to do here. So he says, it says he mows 45 square feet in 3 minutes. So right away to me, when I see 45 square feet in 3 minutes, that says to me, oh, I'm going to deal with some kind of ratio. Okay, it says how much area can he mow in 20 minutes? Well, this is very similar to what we did before. So I'm going to write 45 square feet, and I'm going to put that over 3 minutes. Okay, and I want to relate that to how much area he can mow in 20 minutes. Okay, so what we usually would do is set up a proportion and say that's equal to, I'm going to put 20 minutes down here, and what I'm looking for is right up here. Alright, how many square feet can he mow in that 20 minutes? So once we have a proportion set up, we're going to cross multiply. Alright, so 3 times x gives me 3x, and 45 times 20, that's a pretty big number, so I'm going to get out my calculator. Okay, we'll move it over here, and we'll go 45 times 20. Although hopefully you can maybe do that in your head, but anyway, it's 900 if you need to use the calculator. And it looks like it turns out really nice, because we're going to divide by 3 on both sides, and x equals 300 minutes. Okay, whoops, sorry, not minutes, square feet, 300 minutes, yeah. Alright, so 300 square feet. Alright, so pretty straightforward for the first part, but now we're going to take it a little further, okay, and we're going to say since he mows at a constant rate, and again, that's important that they've said that's a constant rate. Alright, we can create an equation describing how much area, we're gonna use a y to stand for area, and we want to know how much area he can mow in a certain number of minutes, t. Alright, so since they said it's at a constant rate, I can start with the same proportion as I did up top, okay, remembering that this is square feet on the top, and this is minutes on the bottom, in the denominator there. Okay, and I'm going to, again, just match up the variables that they want us to use. And area is going to be y, so since I have area in the numerator up here, I'm going to put a y up there. And in a certain number of minutes, t, so minutes is in the denominator here, so I'm going to put t at the bottom. Alright, and we're going to take this equation, and we're going to solve it for, it looks like the problems are asking us, you know, the problem up here asked us how much area he can mow. So I'm going to solve this equation for y. I'm going to get y all by itself. Alright, and in order to do that, I'm going to switch over to red here. I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by t. Alright, and when I do that, this is really t over 1 here, so these t's would cancel and give me a y, that's again square feet. And usually when we write an expression, you know, which is part of this bigger equation, we write the numbers as coefficient first, and then we're multiplying by t. Alright? So here is an equation that will let me predict, we're going to do that in a minute, it's going to let me predict different amounts of time and how much square feet he can mow. Okay, so I want to remember this equation. So we have an equation now that will allow us to figure many things out and graph it like we're going to do in a minute. Alright, so I want to switch over here, and I need to remember that equation. 45 over 3 times t equals y. So I'm going to turn this off and I'm going to turn that on, and I'm going to write my equation right in here. Alright, 40, whoops, hold on, turn that on, there we go. So 45 over 3 times t equals y. Alright, and I'm going to use this equation now. Since it was at a constant rate, I can use this equation to predict if I have, say, 0 minutes. I'm going to plug in a 0 there. Well, that one's pretty easy. 45 over 3, and I'm multiplying it by a 0. I'm plugging a 0 in for the t. That's going to equal y. Well, 45 over 3 times 0 is 0. So y equals 0. So the point that I can graph over here on my graph when I get to it is going to be 0, 0. Alright, that one's pretty easy to do. And I have a graph over here that goes up to 20, which you have on your paper as well. So I'm going to go by, I'm going to try to be a little smart about this. And I see I have something over 3. So I'm going to put in multiples of 3. That way I know when I plug in the number that the 3's are going to, the 3 on the denominator is going to cancel. Alright, so I'm going to fill in the rest of this table using these minutes. Alright, now I'm not going to have you sit and watch while I do all of that, write it all out. So I'm going to pause my video and write them all in, and then display them so that, again, you're not watching me write everything down. Alright, once I get them on there, you can pause your video, copy the information down, or actually pause it right now and figure these out. Alright, and make sure that you know how to get them. And all you're doing is plugging the 3 in for the t and figuring out what y is. Okay, so you can see what I did here. I filled in these values for t in the equation that I created for every one of these values of t, and I did the math. Alright, so I got these values for y, and that gives me these points that I'm going to graph over here on my graph. Now when I got all done with this, I saw that the largest value for area, for y, is 225. So I said, well, I need to get to at least 225 on my y-axis. So I can't go by ones over here. What I did is I went by 15s. Okay? And that doesn't mean that you have to label every block to be an increment of 15. I just went every other one. So I put this little line here, which really helps when you're trying to show other people what each block is worth. I put this little line every other block and told the person, this is 30, this is 60, this is 90. That means I'm going every block is 15. Alright, now along the bottom I'm just going by ones because I know this goes up to 20 blocks and I know I only have to get to 15. So if you're only going by ones, you don't have to label it. Alright, notice I have my label over here. This is time in minutes. Okay, I put my units here. This is my area in square feet. Make sure you label what these axes are showing you. Alright, so now I'm just going to take these points and I'm going to graph them. I'm going to graph them in blue. And again, I'm going to pause my video. You go ahead and pause your video right now and just graph all of those points that show up. And hopefully we get the same graph at the end. Alright, so go ahead and pause your video, graph the points, and then mine will be right up here in a minute. Alright, so you can see that what I did was to graph the points. 2, 3, yep, got that one on there, and 1, 2, 3, and got that one up to 90, etc. Alright, and then I went ahead and I connected them with a line. Now you guys are going to use a ruler, so yours is going to be perfectly straight. I did the best I can with this little drawing pad that I have here hooked up to the computer. Alright, and what that's going to allow me to do is then to predict how many square feet can he mow in 7 minutes. Alright, and I'm going to switch over to green here, and I'm going to find 7 minutes along the bottom. 4, 5, 6, 7. Right here would be 7 minutes. And since it's at a constant rate, that allows me to draw this line straight through those points, and now I can just predict. I can go straight up on the 7-minute mark and say, oh, right there, that's where it crosses the line, just below this block right here. And I slide over, and of course it's going to be, an approximation, because I'm not right on that specific block. And actually, though, if you think about it, it should be right on that specific block. So I'm going to slide right over, because the way I set up my graph, I go over 3 and up 3. So yeah, so it's just, if you were to draw it with your ruler, you would see it'd be right on that block. So now I can see right here, since I was going by 15s, that would be how much? That would be 105 right there. So to predict how many square feet he can mow in 7 minutes, right from the graph, we can say 105 square feet. Okay, and the big push, the reason why we're doing this is because now that I have this graph, I could extend it. I could make my graph bigger, and I could say, well, how many square feet is he going to mow in, say, 40 minutes, or 2 hours, or 5 hours? And this graph could predict for me, or I could just simply use the equation up here to figure that out. All right, so that's what we're after, and we're trying to do with these problems, is to be able to predict big numbers or small numbers, and use the graph or use the equation to predict how long it would take him to do this, or how much area he could mow if he was doing this many minutes per se. So that's the whole reason behind this. Okay. So here's exercise 2, and it's going to be very similar to exercise 1. It says water is flowing at a constant rate out of a spigot. And if you don't know what a spigot is, it's like the little handle that's on the side of your house that you turn the water and the water comes out. It's any kind of handle that you can turn it on and off, and it's not the handle part, but it's the actual part that the water's flowing out. So anyway, it says suppose the volume of water that comes out of the spigot in 5 minutes is 17.5 gallons. All right, how many gallons of water comes out in t minutes? And it says to use V to stand for the volume of water. Okay, so this is very similar to the previous problem, but we're kind of jumping right into part B of exercise 1. All right, so I'm focusing in on this 5 minutes and 17.5 gallons. So I'm going to make a ratio out of that information there. Okay, and remembering this is gallons up here, and 5 is the minutes down here. So I'm going to match those up with my variables here. It says you're going to have T is in minutes, so the T is going to go down here, and the V is the volume of water, so that would match up with the gallons up here. So I'm going to put V up there, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to solve this equation for V, okay, for volume. So I'm going to switch over to red here so that you can see this is the algebra that I'm doing. I'm going to multiply this side of the equation by T, and I'm going to multiply this side of the equation by T. So that means these T's here are going to cancel. So I have a big V over there, that stands for volume. And over here, again, I'm going to write it a better way. I'm going to write it as the number first and the variable second. So this is my equation that I'm going to use, and I'm going to plug that right in over here. So 17.5 over 5 times T equals V. Alright, now I'm going to do the same thing that I did before, is I'm going to plug in some values for T. Now again, be smart about it. You have a 5 in the denominator, so don't plug numbers in like 3 or 9. Plug in numbers that are going to cancel with that 5. Well, real easy. Start out with 0 and then just plug in multiples of 5. So I'm going to plug in those numbers right there. Now again, I'm going to pause and I'm going to fill all these in. What I want you to do is the same thing. Just take each number and plug in a 0 where you see a t. And obviously this one's going to be 0, so I'm going to have the point 0, 0 to start. Okay, and again, you pause it right now, fill in the numbers, and I will be back with my numbers as well. Alright, so you can see that I did some work here. When I paused my video, I plugged in a 5, a 15, a 20, etc. into the equation every time. And I got the answer for volume, and this gives me all of these points here. And I also went ahead and I labeled my graph down here. Notice again, I labeled the time down here in minutes. I noticed I needed to go up to 30, so I couldn't go by ones down here. I actually went every block was 2. So you can see I have my little hash marks here, and I labeled every other block. So this is 4, 8, 12, etc. And that got me up to 40. I figured out that I needed to get up to 105 over here, and there wasn't a really convenient way to label these. I went every other block being 15. So 105 is going to get me up to here on the graph, which is pretty good. Alright, so I'm still going to use a big chunk of the graph when I go ahead and graph these points. So again, if you want to pause your video, go ahead and graph the points, and I'm going to do the same, and we're going to have a nice straight line here. Okay, so I went ahead and labeled my points here. You notice this one I have over in blue now. I notice I put 15 twice there, so that should have been a 20 there. But anyways, I graphed the points, and again, you use a ruler to connect your points because they should line up very well. I had to make this one a little bigger. That should be right on that block there. Alright, and what it does, again, is it allows me to now predict a certain amount of time and a certain amount of gallons. So let me just switch over and turn this layer on. And what they're asking me is now use the graph to predict how many gallons of water will come out of the spigot in 18 minutes. Alright, so again, I find my 18 minutes down here, and since I'm going by 2's, 18 would be right there. So I go straight up from 18 minutes and see where I cross the graph, which would be right there, and slide over, and it looks, I'm trying to draw a straight line there, slide over. It looks like it's a little over 60 gallons, so I would predict approximately, okay, if you want to approximate, you can use this little similar symbol. I'm going to say about 62 gallons. Alright, now whenever you use a graph, unless it falls right spot on that grid line, you're going to be approximating. Okay, so about 62 gallons is what I'm saying it's going to be. If you want to do exact, you could always use the equation, plug in 18 for t, and then actually do the math. Alright, so that's a pretty easy way to do that as well. Alright, so hopefully that was pretty straightforward for you.